Animated hits like The Lion King and Aladdin may lead to sequels, but the voices may sound a little off the second time around. Some of the most famous voice actors have been replaced for a number of reasons, including recasting, death, and money issues. See some of the 10 most famous examples, and if you can tell the difference in the replacement voices. Katy Perry. Katy Perry transitioned from the music stage to the Hollywood vocal booth thanks to a happy accident. While the producers and director were planning the original Smurfs movie, they just happened to use samples of Perry's voice for the character of Smurfette. Once they found out that she was the person behind the voice samples, they reached out and she gladly accepted the role. Perry went all in for 2 Smurfs films, and was even seen dressing on the red carpet as Smurfette for multiple appearances. When a third Smurfs movie was announced, fans expected the singer to return, but that was not the case. The third film was a reboot that wiped away the animation and real-life hybrid to create something that was all digital. Fellow singer Demi Lovato was chosen for the role of Smurfette and helped make the part come to life. Not only did Lovato take over the role, but Smurfette was the center of the story that sent all of the little blue guys to a lost Smurf world inhabited by females. There's no word yet on a sequel. It will likely depend on the home video performance of Smurfs: The Lost Village first. Ashton Kutcher and Martin Lawrence. Sony Pictures had sat out of the animation game for too long. Companies like Disney, Pixar, and Illumination were dominating the box office as Sony decided to throw their hat in. The first project that would get released was Open Season. The story follows the tale of a domesticated bear that is forced back into the wild by a goofy deer. The bear and deer were played by comedic actors Ashton Kutcher and Martin Lawrence. While the film wasn't a huge success, it was popular enough to warrant a sequel, and Sony set off on creating Open Season 2 for a direct-to-video release. Obviously, the contracts for Martin Lawrence and Kutcher were too much for a direct-to-video release. For the sequel, Kutcher was replaced by Joel McHale, and Lawrence was replaced by Mike Epps. All 4 actors have very distinct voices, so the change was pretty obvious, especially if you watch them back-to-back. Sony went even cheaper for Open Season 3 by dropping McHale and Epps for 2 unknown voice actors. A couple of other direct-to-video features have also used other actors playing the same characters. It's pretty safe to say that Kutcher and Lawrence won't be returning to these roles.
Peter, look out!
Joaquin Phoenix. Joaquin Phoenix doesn't look like the typical family-friendly actor. He usually appears in more adult-oriented and artsy films. Examples of this include Her, Reservation Road, and I'm Still Here. This is why it's surprising that Phoenix would take the lead role in an animated Disney film. Phoenix voiced the role of Kenai, a hunter who accidentally killed a mother bear and then gets transformed into a bear himself. Brother Bear was a pretty entertaining film, with good pieces of comedy and a moving story.
Yes!
But that wasn't compelling enough to have Phoenix stick around for the sequel. The character of Kenai returns in Disney's Brother Bear 2, but this time he's voiced by former Grey's Anatomy star Patrick Dempsey. That is one of the only characters that was recast for the movie. Even Rick Moranis, a man who retired from Hollywood, returned to voice one of the Canadian moose.
Okay, you guys, I guess we'll just catch up with those guys later, eh?
The direct-to-video sequel isn't as deep as the first entry. Maybe that's what drew Phoenix away. Dempsey does a nice job of using his own voice and adding a little of the flair that Phoenix brought to the role.
I'm ready this time.
Not now, Slink. I got some bad news.
Bad news?
Jim Varney. The Toy Story franchise is filled with several famous voices. There's Tim Allen, Tom Hanks, Joan Cusack, and Michael Keaton, among others. For Toy Story 1 and 2, the lovable character of Slinky Dog was voiced by comedic actor Jim Varney. That name may not ring any bells at first, but he's the man simply known as Ernest. Throughout the 80s and 90s, Varney starred in several Ernest films, including Ernest Goes to Camp and Ernest Saves Christmas. He was a great part of the Toy Story franchise, and the only reason he never appeared in the third film was because he passed away. Instead of getting rid of the Slinky Dog character, one of Varney's good friends stepped up to the plate. Television actor Blake Clark took over the voice and did the role justice. The Boy Meets World and Home Improvement star has a scratchy voice that's very similar to Varney's. It's hard to tell the difference, and if anything, the Slinky Dog sounds a little older, like the toy has aged. Blake Clark has already been confirmed to return to the role of Slinky Dog for Toy Story 4. The film is scheduled for release in 2019.
Dear, I've said too much.
Jeremy Irons. One of the most iconic Disney villains of all time has to be Scar from The Lion King. The evil brother of Mufasa killed his own brother, blamed it on his nephew Simba, and then plotted to take over the whole Pride Lands with a pack of hyenas. One of the things that made Scar feel so evil was the brilliant performance delivered by Jeremy Irons. The acclaimed actor made Scar feel real and had millions of children hate him for his dastardly acts. The climax of The Lion King saw the demise of Scar by the same hyenas that pledged their loyalty to him, so no one was really expecting the character to return in Lion King 2: Simba's Pride, but he did. During a creepy dream sequence, Simba is once again confronted by Scar and has to relive his father's tragic death all over again. Scar's appearance in the scene includes a few lines, including a rehash of his infamous "Trust Me" line. Instead of using Iron's lines from the first film, they hired veteran voice actor Jim Cummings to fill in the small role. Cummings is a voiceover legend and did the role justice. His voice has been used in hundreds of television shows and movies, including a Goofy movie, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and various Scooby-Doo releases.
Buenos dias, my friends. I am Eduardo Perez.
Al Pacino. The next entry on our list is because the actor getting replaced was only hired for the sequel, and his voice was never used for the film. After the massive success of Despicable Me, there was bound to be a sequel, and this one kicked things up a notch. The main villain in the story was a masked man known as El Macho. Al Pacino was originally signed up for the role and recorded all of his lines for the movie. Weeks before the film was set to make its premiere, Al Pacino pulled out of the project over creative differences and demanded that his performance be removed from the film. Producers scrambled together and hired Benjamin Bratt for the role. He recorded his lines, fit into the El Macho character nicely, and no one ever got to hear Al Pacino's version of the villain. Despite losing a big name like Pacino, the film went on to be an even bigger hit than the original.
Look away!
Ooh.
Thanks to this and the spin-off Minions, Despicable Me 3 is set to hit theaters this summer. Benjamin Bratt does not reprise his role, but familiar voices from actors like Russell Brand, Kristen Wiig, and Steve Carell will be featured in the movie. Reese Witherspoon. After appearing in several live-action films, Reese Witherspoon chose to make her animation debut in the 2009 film Monsters vs. Aliens. The movie had great comedy, a clever plot, and Witherspoon got to play the character of Susan Murphy, aka Ginormica. The movie was a success and led to several short films that Witherspoon also lent her voice to. When it came time to make a sequel in the form of a TV series, Witherspoon wasn't as committed. Nickelodeon picked up the show and probably couldn't afford her salary, as the show aired for 26 episodes. Witherspoon was replaced by Ricki Lindhome, an actress who has also used her voice for productions like the Lego Batman movie and the SpongeBob movie, Sponge Out of Water. In recent years, Witherspoon has gone back to the animation world. In 2016, she provided the voice of a singing pig named Rosita in the movie Sing. Sing was a much bigger hit than Monsters vs. Aliens, and allowed her to showcase a more goofy side for the role. After the success of Sing, maybe she'll return for the sequel this time around. Michael J. Fox. After years of musicals like Aladdin, The Little Mermaid, and The Lion King, Disney Animation decided to focus on more adventure-oriented films for children in the early 2000s. Along with Dinosaur, Brother Bear, and Treasure Planet, Disney presented a science fiction tale called Atlantis: The Lost Empire. The leading actor in the voice cast was Michael J. Fox. Fox played the character of Milo, a scientist that was determined to find Atlantis. The film itself wasn't a huge success, but a cult following led to a direct-to-video sequel entitled Atlantis: Milo's Return. Milo may have returned for the film, but Michael J. Fox was nowhere to be found.
This doesn't make any sense.
Fox was replaced by voice actor James Arnold Taylor. Taylor has been known for voicing the animated version of Obi-Wan Kenobi, The Flash, and the Green Arrow for several animation projects. The reason that Fox didn't return for the role is because he was using his voice for the lead role in Stuart Little 2. It's pretty safe to say that Stuart Little 2 was a much bigger moneymaker than this direct-to-video Disney sequel. In 2006, Fox used his voice again for another Stuart Little movie, and this one was fully animated.
Stay back. Don't come any closer. Please, don't.
Miinie Driver. Miinie Driver has one of the more unique voices in Hollywood. It not only represents her accent from her home in London, but it has a specific sound that stands out whether she's in a live-action film or animated production.
It's really important.
Along with voice roles in films like South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, and An All Dogs Christmas Carol, one of her most well-known voice roles was for Disney's Tarzan.
Daddy, what's all the hullabaloo about?
Playing the female lead of Jane, Driver added spunk and depth to Tarzan's love interest. Her natural ability to speak fast and deliver great lines really shined in the great Disney film. Disney followed the success of Tarzan with 2 sequels. The first sequel, Tarzan 2, was a prequel that featured a younger version of Tarzan before Jane became involved. The second one, entitled Tarzan and Jane, predominantly featured the character and her growing love with the jungle man Tarzan. The production on Tarzan and Jane was as low budget as they come. This is why Driver was nowhere to be found on the sequel. It felt more like a hashed-together animated TV show pilot than a feature film, and really lacked depth without using her voice.
The only way I get out of this is if my master wishes me out.
Robin Williams. You can't talk about Disney voice roles without mentioning the greatest of all time, Robin Williams' performance as the genie in Aladdin.
10,000 years will give you such a crick in the neck.
He was fast-talking, sang memorable songs, and delivered one-liners faster than a speeding train. He was the true highlight of the film, and it's hard to imagine what Aladdin would have been like without his casting. Like most Disney films, the company looked to cash in and rushed ahead with a sequel entitled The Return of Jafar. Robin Williams did not return to the role, after getting into a dispute of the use of his voice for promotional material during the first movie. The replacement for Williams? Homer Simpson.
Jetty.
That's right, Dan Castellaneta, a Simpsons voice regular, was hired to replicate the genie's voice. While he did okay, there is no one that could create the same magic that Williams had. Luckily, Disney realized this and were able to hire him back for the second sequel entitled Aladdin and the King of Thieves. The movie was a huge improvement on The Return of Jafar, and Williams was back to true form, delivering classic jokes and providing great energy for the film.